So let's start. Exercise 1. Let's build a local filter where I want to basically have some text like some text which should be reversed. Now, since it is a local filter, it's as easy as adding filters here. And let's give it a name. For example, reverse would make sense, I guess. Now, reverse, of course, is a method like all filters are, and we get the value we want to work with. And then we return value. Now, to reverse a string, we first have to split it into individual characters so that we have an array of characters instead of a string. Then we can call the reverse function on that array. And then we can again join it. Join it with an empty string to join characters next to each other and have no character in between. That is really all. That is the reverse filter. And I can show you how it works by now outputting this in string interpolation here. So outputting it like this. Of course, some text now would not work, so we have to turn this into a string and then apply our reverse filter here. I had to turn it into a string, otherwise Vue.js would look for a property named some text, which wouldn't make sense because it's an invalid property name to begin with. So let's see if that worked. Looks great to me. We see some text was indeed completely reversed, not just the individual words, but the whole string, which is exactly what our filter here does. So that was really quick and easy, this first local filter. The next task is to build a global filter, which also uses a word. Let's stick to the example here, test, and then outputs this new string here, which also gives us the length. For a global filter, I will go into the main.js file, and here I want to register a new filter with view filter. Let's give it a name of, let's say, calculate length, because that is what it does. And this shall be a function. I'll use XIII syntax here, which takes a value, of course. And it shall then return a new string based on that. This new string shall basically be our value because we don't want to change the word, but we do want to append something. We want to append a white space and an opening parentheses. And in the end, we will have a closing parentheses like this. But in between those parentheses, we now want to have the length being calculated. And we can do this by simply applying or using value length. Value is a string and strings have the length property. Now let's try this out. We created this calculate length filter here. And therefore I can quickly turn this into string interpolation here. For that, of course, I need to use a string again, because otherwise we would look for a property named test here. And then I can use, calculate length like this. Let's see this in action. Looks exactly how I wanted it to look like. Let's try it with something else, like, for example, my name here. Choose your name, of course. Well, that looks about right. So these were the first two exercises solved by using filters. Now let's do the same by using computed properties. So I will quickly copy the two paragraphs I used before, because I want to use the same text so that we have exactly the same results, but now of course with computed properties. Now how do we do that? Now the issue of course is that here we're hard coding some text. Therefore using a computed property on some text like this is a bit hard. Now let me quickly adjust this. To be able to use a computed property correctly and to have a more realistic use case, I'll create my data method here to then return my data object in the end. And here I will have my first text, which shall be some text here. And I'll have my second text, which is my name in this case as I used it. And of course here that shouldn't be an equal sign but a colon. So now I have this stored in properties I can use here. So first text and second text, and you could of course also use this in the above two examples where we use filters. Actually, let's do this so that we really have the same things there. So second text here. And now I can set up my computed properties. So I'll set up the computed object here, and I want to create my reversed computed property, let's say, reversed like this. And in the reversed computed property, I simply want to return this first text and then again split with an empty string to split by character, reverse, and then join again with an empty string. So that's the same logic as in the filter, and the same is of course true for the calculate length property here. Here I want to return this second text plus and then a white space, a parentheses, closing parentheses, and in between, just like before, I want to have my second text length. And with that, I can now go up there. And here, of course, I no longer use the filters. Instead, here I want to output the reversed property, the computed property. And here I want to, well, let's name it length aware because it knows its name. So its length. So let's use this here. Now let's head over and see if that works. Looks perfect to me. We get the same results twice in the first block here using a filter or filters, and the second block using computed properties. Now, since we outsourced the calculate length function here into a computed property, we can no longer share it as a filter, which is too bad because now if we would have another place in the app where we wanted to use that, of course, we would have to have the same property name second text there, but if that would be the case, well then we can't use it like this. So in order to make it available in other components too, let me create a mixin here. I'll name it length aware mixin, and that's a JavaScript file. And here I will simply export a constant length aware mixin like this, which is an object, and all I want to have in this object here is my computed property object here. I don't need reversed, but I want to have length aware in here, and then I can now go back to the app.view file, remove length aware here, but therefore add the mixins array to now also add this newly created mixin. I have to import it first, of course. So I will import it from this length aware mixin JavaScript file. Therefore here it's the length aware mixin, which I now add here. And with that, if I save it, and let's reload, check the console if you got any errors, looks great to me. So with that, we first used some filters, then used some computed properties, and finally outsourced one computed property into a mixin, which we could now use in multiple components. One restriction, of course, all components where we want to use that have to use this second text property to store the text we want to transform there. And with that, I'd say, nice little practicing on filters and mixins. I hope you feel comfortable using them now. And with that, let's move on.